In this video, we're going to be talking a little bit more about the particular social challenges each of us has faced as a result of our chronic pain. Some friends are great at being a friend to a person who's going through an ordeal with chronic pain. Some people are not quite so great. So we're going to be having a look at both sides of that. We're also going to be talking about the sorts of things that we've done to try and overcome these social barriers. Chronic pain is a pretty horrible thing, but it's not necessarily the end of the world or your social life. First up, Jen's going to tell you a story about how her friend treated her on a particular occasion when she had to spend time in hospital.
I had this incident at the most recent time I was in hospital. I got out of the hospital and I was really upset because I got some bad news about the endometriosis being much worse than we thought. And I thought, okay, my usual attitude, best thing to do is just get straight back into life and I'll feel better. So while I was in the last day of being in the hospital, I organised a whole bunch of social stuff to do, meet this person in a cafe and go to the movies and other things. And I organised 12 different things for the next 2 weeks. And across those 2 weeks, all 12 people bailed on me. So 12 out of 12 people bailed on me, 4 without bothering to tell me, so they left me, just in the place without them. None for any good reason, which I could have accepted. And so I thought, hang on, this is wrong. Friends don't do this to each other. And so I basically dumped effectively everybody. I literally dumped everyone in my life and went, right, I'm going to start again. And the friends I've got out of that process are far, far more valuable than, before.
Pain is a pretty fascinating thing. It affects everybody differently. For a lot of people living with chronic pain, they aren't even aware of what the underlying cause of their pain is. They've had every scan there is in the book, every blood test, every x-ray, every MRI, and there just doesn't seem to be anything wrong, yet this chronic pain persists. When there isn't an obvious underlying cause, it can be really easy for society to judge that person, for people to call them a liar, a faker, to think they're a hypochondriac, that they're exaggerating their symptoms. All of this is really, really common behavior that people with chronic pain run into in other people. Next up, Jen's going to tell you a little bit about how her life changed after she was actually given a diagnosis for her pain.
I felt incredibly empowered with that, and it's probably the day I was diagnosed, 9th of July 2009, was the most empowering and vindicating, I think is the word for it, day of my life, because then when people asked, I could say a little bit more than just, this is sort of the way it is in a descriptive sense, and it shouldn't be the case, but for me it's lucky that it is the case. That being able to say, I've had surgery, or I have a specialist, or I'm taking this medication, something that was sort of solid to people, suddenly took on this massive significance. People took that silly, concrete, practical stuff as enough, And so it was very empowering, but not just in the sense that I could talk about it, but it just empowered my whole manner of being. It changed the way I show myself to the world. Just being hit with the biggest self-vindication you could ever be hit with. It was like 12 years of up yours, everybody, That kind of does change the way you are, and I know that not everybody gets that, and I completely understand that, and I feel that, and I feel very lucky.
In this next segment, Jen's going to tell you a story about what I think is one of the gutsiest moves that a person can do, whether they have chronic pain or not, in which she took the time to evaluate who of her friends was making her life better, who was enriching her experience on this planet, and who was just making things harder. And with that information, she completely made over her social life and got rid of the friends that were making things harder, went out there and made herself some new friends.
I was in 4th year uni at the time, which was my last year. And so I was about to start university again, and it could apply the situation to, say, school or a new co-curricular or anything new that I was, you're starting. And I thought, I'm going to approach this like I'm in first year uni again. And so when I went into the lecture theatres out of the year, instead of sitting by myself, I just scanned the room to see if there was anybody who I'd seen in any other class before, and I didn't even have to know their name. It's just at least I knew we had at least another subject in common at some point in our history. And there was this one girl that I'd seen before. I didn't know her name, whatever. So I sat down not next to her, but one seat away from her, because it would have been really weird because there was a whole empty line if I'd sat right next to it. And then I'll just come up with, something really trivial to say. I took a bag of Skittles and I'd start eating them like, just eating them. And then I'd sort of act like I was feeling suddenly rude, like, oh, I shouldn't be eating these beside you. And then I'd offer them to her. I'd be like, oh, sorry, that's really rude of me. Do you want some? And, there was the conversation. Just started these friendships differently. I started them going, no, I'm just going to be honest, because if people aren't going to deal with the chronic pain thing, then I may as well know it now, So I didn't start it up with like, hi, I'm Jen, I have chronic pain. But, when it came up, it did. So when they were saying, oh, so what are your plans for the holidays? Actually, I'm having this surgery done. And, so when it came up, it did. And that way I knew pretty quickly who was going to handle it and how and who wasn't. And the other thing I did was I looked back through my life at people who I'd lost contact with or affected with and went, well, hang on, I think I really undervalued that person, And there was a couple from school who, I hadn't been best friends with them at school or anything, but now that I look back, I was like, well, actually, they have the traits of a person I probably should have been best friends with at school. But it was too late by the time I realised. And so it felt really weird to do, but I just went, hi, I was thinking about school or some other thing we had in common the other day, and it made me think of you and how I haven't spoken to you in a while. And it felt weird, but people don't typically get a phone call out of the blue and go, well, hang on, where is this coming from? Go away. Usually they're like, oh, this is kind of interesting, and people are really into it. And you do have to be a little bit shameless because it is kind of difficult making friends at 20.
Whilst a person's age doesn't necessarily affect how much chronic pain hurts them, how much it is painful, I think it definitely makes a difference in how much it affects their social life. For myself, I was already in my 20s when I developed chronic pain, so I already had a pretty good set group of friends who have been really, really supportive along my journey. There've been a few people who have just sort of dropped off, but then again, that happens in life anyway, whether or not you're living with illness and pain. Not everybody is best friends forever. But I think it makes a difference to younger people because it's really hard to go through your teenage years anyway. It's hard to find where you fit in. It's hard to figure out who you are and who you want to be. So when you have this big burden on top of that, I think it's quite a different effect. It can be a lot more alienating than if you're already of an age where people can sort of understand what you're going through. Or even if they can't understand what you're going through, they can understand that you're in pain and that you might need a little bit of extra consideration. In this next clip, Gianna's going to talk a little bit about what it was like for her developing chronic pain in her 20s.
In some respects, I'm lucky, or not lucky, but I have a friend who also lives with chronic back pain, and she's been in most of the time that I've known her, or the high majority of the time. So I'm not, I guess my friendship group is also not unaccustomed to having people who are not at 100% capacity. In the first 6 months of me being sick, I had a friend who just dropped around like a couple of times a week. She used to just drop around and just chat to me about anything, what was going on in her life, what was happening, and it was so nice to have that exposure because you feel so isolated because you don't know what's going on, you don't know what your body's doing, and you just think, why am I not getting better? This is the worst thing in the world. And I've got one friend who just loves making me meals out of the 2 or 3 things that I eat, and she gets really excited when I can start to eat something else. She's like, oh my God, that's so good, and will make me, try and make me this amazing gourmet dinner out of 2 or 3 things. That was one of the things that helped me to go out. I have, friends that come and give me, if I'm at a social event, they'll sit down behind me, give me a massage. How you feeling? Cup of hot water, make me a heat bag. When I started socialising again, which took me a really, really long time to actually, because I was so scared to go out. I didn't think I'd get through the night without just being in, because I've had flare-ups to the point where I've just barely been able to breathe because I've been in so much pain, and it's really scary to kind of be out in a social environment and think that might happen. So it took me a long time, and I started by going out with like heat, those heat patches. They're my lifesavers. I used to just like strap them to myself. So I'd go out with all these heat patches attached to me, or I'd have, instead of having a bottle of champagne tucked under my arm, I'd have a heat bag tucked under my arm and stick it in my jumper. All these photos of parties, I look like I'm a little bit pregnant because I've got this heat bag tucked into my jacket. So there's, that's for me, that's kind of been the ways and means. And I've actually, now all my friends have the foods that I can eat in their cupboards. They've got, and because it changes depending on what I can tolerate as well, there's constantly like this updated list going around in terms of what I feed you when you come over. So it's been really wonderful in terms of just seeing how supportive everybody's been and how people do adjust really well to whatever situation. If they love you, they adjust.
I do things differently now, and with people who just implicitly understand what they have to do. So I have friends who will go, to the shopping centre together. We'll go shopping and we'll be walking around half an hour or something, and that's cool. And then without having to ask me and without having to make a big deal of it, they'll just go, oh, there's a chair here. We might sit down for 5 minutes. And he'll say, oh, do you want to come to my house to see me instead of, do you want to go out to this pub that has bar stools that are very awkward for you to sit on? Because they just have bothered to understand. And you only have to have that conversation sort of very explicitly once, like I don't talk to them about all the time, like this is good for me, this is bad, because they just they learn to think of it almost instinctively in the way that like people who are used to being around people in wheelchairs will just go to the side of the building where there's a ramp.
For people who have been in chronic pain for a long time and tried most of the treatment options, perhaps have had a little success, perhaps have had no success at all, it can be a really daunting thing to wonder, how am I going to get on with my life? How am I going to handle life if the pain continues? What am I going to do for work? Where am I going to get money? How am I going to look after myself, take care of my basic needs at home? These are all really, really huge questions, and there are no easy answers. The experience is a little bit different for everybody. But I think at some point, in order to not go crazy and not wallow in depression longer than we need to move on with our lives, we've got to find ways to get a bit of fun back into things, to get back out there, to find different ways of interacting with the world so that we can still be a part of it. In this next segment, Gianna and Sue are going to talk a little bit about the things that they've done to help them get a social life happening and some fun back into their lives.
It's been a couple of things. It's been two things. One, it's been Chronica, which is the app that we've created, and that was because we actually, the way I got into it was we got a scholarship to do a business incubator course, and this was the first time I'd actually engaged in anything in an academic way since being ill, and I didn't even know how I was going to make it through. It was only a few nights or one night a week, but it was such a big deal for me to try and make it and turn up to those courses, and that's when we came up with the idea, because it was about trying to find solutions to problems. And, this was the most obvious problem for me, was just feeling totally out of control and just feeling like everything was in chaos. And so we came up with the idea of Chronica, and that's how it started. So that very slowly being involved in that, and then getting more and more, trying to actually create it and get funding to create it, and doing this from being unwell, that was a very, very big part of trying to heal.
I used to show dogs. I can't run. I now go and I do photography of people at the show. I get to talk to the people I used to talk to, so I still maintain, to a degree, the same level. But I've got into showing of birds, of chooks. I've learnt genetics, something I would never have done before. I'm meeting new people through these new activities, the chooks, and they accept me for having the condition that I have.
The other thing for me is I'm a photographer, and I really love taking photos, and this was, for me, social engagement. I could just have a camera, and it meant that if I wasn't comfortable talking about something, I can kind of hide behind my camera and I can also engage with the world in a different way. I can photograph beautiful food that I can't eat. I can photograph the beautiful things in life. It was a way for me to kind of start to re-engage in what was going on, and that's how I really first started to socialise, was very much a bit behind a camera for a long time, until I felt kind of, and I still do it because I love taking photographs, but it was something that really helped me get through, I guess, a lot of the awkwardness that I felt about just feeling so detached, and like you're in a very different situation to a lot of other people. People are talking about their jobs, or they're stressed about this, or they're stressed about that, and you're thinking, I just feel like I can't relate because I'm in such a different place. The things that are worrying me are so very different.
The internet, and even more so social media, have been things that have really helped me in coping with my chronic pain. I found these things pretty early on. The first thing I did after being diagnosed was go online and look for information about my condition. Unfortunately, at that time, even just 5 years ago, there wasn't a whole lot of information out there. The only personal stories I could find were those about people who were living with really, really severe cases of CRPS. And that wasn't the type of thing I wanted to read because I didn't want to end up like that. As well as using the internet to look up information about CRPS, I began using social media as a way to connect with other people that were experiencing chronic pain. I use forums such as Facebook and Twitter to meet other people. There are some wonderful groups on Facebook that you can join where everyone is supportive and welcoming. One of the most exciting developments in online support for Australians living with chronic pain is Chronic Pain Australia. chronicpainaustralia.org. You can log in there, meet other people, start discussions, share information. It's a really, really wonderful thing that we can now utilize. Making friends online doesn't have to just result in online friends. There are people who I've met online who I've then gone on to meet in real life who are now some of the best friends that I've got. Jen is an example of that. We met on Twitter a couple of years ago without knowing that each other had chronic pain. Through discussions and getting to know each other, we learnt that, we connected, we were able to relate. And now we're really great friends. We talk every couple of days, and I would count her amongst one of the most supportive friends that I have.
Well, having been on Twitter for over 2 years now, I have found that I have a set group of people that I follow, and I feel like I interact with them daily, as opposed to my real life friends on Facebook who I don't interact with, who I just see their feed. I guess Twitter's very much the same way, but you do interact with these people, and there's been quite a few people I've gone and met off Twitter. I've found some really, really good friendships in those people. I feel like I've got sort of another group of friends that I might not know them I talk about them like I do. When you're interacting with them every day, you do feel a part of their life, and you see their pets and you hear their stories about work and whether they're complaining about something or their view on a particular TV show, or it's just mindless crap. That yes, it's just putting another piece of useless information out there. It's of value to people. It's nice to know that I feel like I've got a little Twitter family. I also feel a lot more free to say things there because I don't know them. I don't have to hold back because I don't have to worry about offending a particular group of friends or the people that might clash. Everybody that uses that social media forum knows what it's about and takes it for what it is.
I use it now, to publicise what happened to me because I have no shame about it anymore. I'll, put stuff on my Facebook page. I'll email people and tell them the truth about what's going on because that's the first and best thing we can do is we have to stop being ashamed of it. As hard as that is and as easy it is for me to say, I only say it because I choose also to act on it, and I will do that. And I guess the internet is really good for that because there's all these people, say, on Facebook that I don't see in everyday life, but that are reading these things I'm putting and saying, oh, I feel like I understand a bit more now. I didn't, know about this issue before. And so that is a forum that we can use that we didn't have before. And just to meet other people in, your situation.
I have also found that it's very important to find a social outlet within, I guess, the computer world, the big wide world, web. Finding people that has this condition as well, because talking with these people makes you realise that you're not alone. Because after 15 years, I've still not met a person that has this condition as well. And so by finding others on the internet, I'm able to communicate, talk, compare, help, which is also a really, really wonderful thing. So I guess that's how I use social media. to find these people and to research and to find new ways of helping myself, because I do also feel that it's important to do that, to actually learn to help yourself. It's a very important thing.
Just like meeting people in real life, meeting people online can have its pros and its cons. They aren't all positive experiences. In this next clip, Gianna's going to talk a little bit about one of the negative aspects that people can encounter when first entering, especially the chronic pain community online.
I certainly did seek the company of people who are also living with chronic pain, mainly just because I felt so isolated in my situation. One of the things that I did try and do was just go online and join some forums, but I also found it a bit difficult because, I've gone through a lot of depression through being chronically unwell, and I was finding that, a lot of people I was talking to were also going through the same thing, and though it was wonderful to be united, it was also very difficult to try and get out of that headspace, being surrounded by a lot of people who are also really, really unhappy and struggling as well.
When I first started writing my blog, I didn't really know what I was doing. I was mainly writing about the things that I was doing to distract myself from chronic pain. But as time went on and the pain spread, it became really, really hard to do anything other than dealing with pain on a day-to-day basis. I chose to keep writing about that because I think it's valuable to share our experiences. I think it's valuable to share the day-to-day things that don't necessarily come up when you're at a doctor's appointment. The things that people only really understand if they've lived through it. I know that I was looking for that. I was searching for that when I was first ill. So once I got a bit of experience blogging, I really wanted to give that back to the online community. I wanted to share what I've learned and just that I'm here, that I'm going through this, that I have good days, that I have bad days, because I think it's really important to let the world know what it's really like for people with chronic pain, especially being that there is so much stigma attached to people assuming that they are psychosomatic issues, that we're hypochondriacs, all that sort of thing. I think that by sharing our stories, we can really start to break that down. And it's not just a one-way street. I've had people contact me from all around the world dealing with so many different conditions that cause chronic pain that I couldn't even count them all. And they share their stories with me. I'm able to relate to them. They give back to me what I give on my blog. So it's been a really positive experience for me.
I wanted to see, I needed to see someone who'd gone through it and was feeling like they were starting to not let it control them, and they were starting to take control. And I think that, that's one of the things that, I really like about what you're doing. I think it's really important just to try and offer that there is something else that, it can take a long time, but things do get better. Even though your pain might not go away and things are still really tough, it does get better. Your headspace gets better and you do start to manage it better.
I have been to hell and back, but because I've been to hell, I can now help other people.
I think what people forget is you can have a conversation, and in particular, our story between how you and I met is the greatest story in the history of the world. through reading and talking over the internet before meeting, having a real life friendship, we found that we had so many familiar traits and similar issues with our pain and chronic pain, even down to the same medication and doctors, and the world is really quite small. But in the last 2 years that I've known you, you have been someone that I've been able to look up to, because I've seen, although you've got a diagnosis of what's going on and I don't, the way that you deal with things and the way that you handle things is something that I can aspire to do, even though I'm younger. It makes it much easier for me, and to know that using social media did that is why I think it's the greatest story in the history of the world.
I know a lot of people, quite understandably and reasonably, they'll actually meet people through those forums that they haven't met in person. I haven't done so much of that, not because I'm averse to it, but I guess because when I did choose to revamp my social life, basically, and I just dumped everybody and started again, the people I got out of that process were from my life and were so good. I haven't felt the need. But now, having met people with chronic pain in the last couple of months, actually, for the first time, knowingly, I'm sure I've met people before, but that has made me realise that maybe it would be a good thing to do, because you don't realise how beneficial it is to share with people. And you don't even have to talk about your pain. You just have this kind of understanding of what each other lives through that just makes the friendship nice anyway. So I think I might explore that.
The big wide world web can be just about as daunting as facing a life with chronic pain. So for those of you who are feeling a little bit timid or just simply wondering where to start, where to find these people, how to build your own support network, in the next segment, Sue and Jen are going to tell you a little bit about how they got started socialising online and give you some ideas for ways that you can too.
I would just do Google searches of RSD. I would find that there are groups out there, which was really wonderful. I would join these groups. I'd lurk for ages. I was so nervous. But then I was reading things and I'm like, hey, that's me. This person is talking about me. And I just had to go, hi, yep, I've got RSD and here I am. But there's, within, like in Australia itself, there's numerous groups. And in the bigger cities, I'm finding that there are also support groups starting to pop up. But seeing I'm in the country, I'm away from all of that. I don't have that chance to be able to go face to face.
I think you do have to go out and look. You've got to be a little bit proactive in finding people. I mean, not every story is going to be like ours, but you can start to look around blogs and so forth, and you'll often see that people will add find me on Twitter or find me on Facebook, or this is my blog sort of thing, and you can find people's stories that way, and it's not just a way of getting to know people, but just getting an understanding of where they're at as well, and knowing that there are people out there that are dealing with the same thing. The world might feel like it's crashing down, and sometimes it does, but there are lots of people that feel the same way. So whether you want to complain or whether you want to be sort of proactive and search for friendships where you can confide in people that actually feel the same way, and just know that they feel the same way, is a reassuring feeling, and you can get a lot out of that.
Whether it's friends that you see in your real life that you see rarely or really regularly, or perhaps that you only interact with online, it's really important to make sure that the people you choose to surround you are going to support you in your journey with chronic pain, because there's no escaping your health. You can't escape it, so you need people around you who are going to support you.
I only want to hang around people that make me feel good, and it doesn't matter if that means I've only got 3 friends, because the people around you do really influence you, and so you don't want people there that make you feel worse more than they make you feel better, because they do have such a powerful influence over you. So I do have, not that I'm counting, but I know I have less friends by number than I did before, but I have more real friends than I did before, and that is far more important than anything else.
Pain and stress are very physiologically connected. Being in a stressful environment can quite literally make the experience of pain worse. For that reason, it's really important to try and find ways to make your life as peaceful as possible. Your social life, your home life, your family life, all of these things are a part of you. So for everybody out there who is living with chronic pain, thank you so much for watching this. I hope that you've been able to learn something or see something from a different perspective. Please do add your comments and feedback, because I'd love to hear from you. The more voices out there telling the truth about what it's like to live with chronic pain, the sooner the world is going to hear us. Thank you.